Hi, my name is Sarah Little, and I'm going to start with a scripture. This is from Matthew 7, verse 21 through 23. It says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' And then I will declare to them, 'Depart from me, I never knew you, you who practice lawlessness.'" This verse has just been really pivotal in shaping me in the last couple of years, coming to realize that it's not enough to just believe in Him and to do good things, but to really know Him deeply and to have that intimate relationship and knowledge of Him. My story with God started very, very early. Jesus first introduced Himself to me when I was less than a year old. I have this very vivid memory from when I was a baby, laying in a bassinet, a yellowish white, and apparently I was making quite a lot of noise because both of my parents came into my line of sight in it. So I have this snapshot memory of engaging with Jesus and then seeing my parents sort of looking at me like wondering what was going on with me. For a long time, I thought that memory might be my imagination, but I did ask my mom once about the various details of it, and she confirmed it for me. So I've always sort of held on to that. I would say the next major memory I have of Him and an encounter with Him was Him reintroducing Himself to me around the age of 4. And then consistently thereafter, just continually appearing to me and telling me who He was in terms of my relationship to Him and the purpose that He had created me for, the people that I had come from being Jews, and the people that He would eventually send me to. My mother's family is Jewish, although they stopped practicing Judaism. So I was raised going to Christian churches. But a big part of my faith has always been this Jewish element. I had a very tumultuous and violent upbringing. My mother was very abusive. I'm so grateful that He chose early on to introduce Himself to me and save me from that and begin, according to His purpose, to form me into something that I couldn't make myself into. When I was a kid, instead of watching cartoons on Saturday morning, I would spend the first portion of the morning watching home remodeling shows and carpentry shows, watching these guys, build a chest of drawers or a chair or a table was just fascinating to me. I loved it. I think it drew out of me something that God had planted there, an ability to design and create with my hands. As that developed through my adolescence and teenage years and up into high school, He really started to focus those interests and talents toward theatrical and film-related projects. I went to a high school where there was a really big emphasis on theater, and I was able to be involved in the technical aspects of theater from the beginning of my high school career through to the end. So I just really cultivated a love for designing and producing sets, and specifically to do it in the film industry. One day, in November of 2009, I heard God say to me, "It's time. Now it's time to go." I'd been thinking of moving to Los Angeles, the film capital of the world, for years. I never felt like the timing was right. I was committed to jobs. I was in relationships with people that I felt like I needed to stay in, that I needed to invest in certain people or in certain places. I had a great church community at one point that I just didn't want to lose. Like, nothing was worth losing that for me. And I had a great house that I was living in, doing the kind of work that I love to do, waiting tables on the side. I had developed some friendships with people that I fell in love with and was really feeling fulfilled. And then God said, "It's time. Now it's time." What that meant for me was that I had to sell everything that I owned and move to a place that I'd never even been to. I'd never lived outside of Arkansas. I had this bargain that I made with God. Okay, God, if this is really You talking to me, and I knew it was. I knew it was the entire time, but I said to Him, if this is really You, then I need You to prove it, and these are my criteria. I've got to sell these things, and I need to make this much money, and I had this amount in my mind of money that I just had to make, or I knew it couldn't happen. Within 2 weeks, all of my furniture had sold. One thing in particular I had was a piano that I had grown particularly fond of. It was an antique, upright, grand Baldwin piano. And I had a lot of things that I had accumulated and really had become excuses for staying. I just prayed about it. I was like, God, I feel very strongly that I shouldn't accept a lesser amount, but I think you really want me to do this, and so I'm going to trust that you're going to make this happen, and I'm going to make my plans anyway. Finally, the piano sold, and I received the money for the piano the day before I had scheduled to leave. I had decided I would leave Arkansas, I would drive out of Arkansas the day after Thanksgiving. I don't think I will ever forget that moment as long as I live. I literally danced around my empty house and screamed and laughed and giggled because this excitement just overwhelmed me that I was taking a step of faith and that God had provided for that step of faith. And I knew that if I continued on this path that He would continue to provide. The process of getting here took about 4 days. When I got here, I had made arrangements to move into a very small little guest house at a lady's house. When I called her to tell her that I was coming into town, she told me that she had rented the space to another person. That was an interesting setback. I ended up finding another place to live pretty quickly. I had to sort of scramble for that, but that in and of itself, that's one example of what would begin a process of deep trust and reliance on God for His provision. One of the main things that I felt that was my purpose here in LA was to work as a production designer or art director within the film industry. I'd had years of experience after high school, taking on some independent film projects at home, and then moving here. But I didn't have what a lot of people value as an education in that particular career field. So I was a little bit nervous about my ability to find work. I really didn't even know exactly where to start. I composed a resume and I started submitting my resumes to as many job opportunities as I could find and hoping that someone would just kind of give me a chance to get started here in LA. After 2 months, I started getting work consistently. I've been told most of the transplants to LA, especially in the film industry, don't get consistent work really for the first 6 months to a year that they live here, that it is a huge struggle to break into this industry. A lot of people end up having to take on part-time work doing something other than what it is they're wanting to do. I applied for those jobs too, but I didn't get any of them. I actually didn't ever get interviewed for a waitressing job or a clerical position. I just started getting work as a designer and have worked consistently every month since January of 2010. I've had at least, I think on an average, 2 jobs per month, which is a really, really strong average. Not all of those jobs have been paid, which can sting sometimes, but they've been good experiences and almost all of them have led to other work. One of the coolest things and the scariest things at the same time, very recently, actually right around my 1-year mark, I started feeling God tell me to stop sending my resume out, to stop trying. And I started feeling Him say, stop looking, let me bring it to you. And this was a huge, huge leap of faith. Not only did it contradict my reason, if you don't look for a job, you can't get a job, but even just practically, like, to me, it seemed very irresponsible. It just went against my personality, a control freak. And so that was definitely a true test. And that was a moment where I've experienced Him in a way that I had never experienced Him before. I had just a new understanding of who He was and how He provided for His children, because I kept getting consistent work, but I was getting calls, people calling my cell phone that I'd never met, that I'd never worked with before, who had gotten my name and my phone number from people I'd never met or worked with before. And so this new wave of work was coming in, and it was literally coming from the Lord. Another part of that process, something that happened right around that 1-year mark, is that I started kind of getting an idea for something that I could do. I was asking God, this is great. I'm pursuing my dream. I'm pursuing using my talents and my skills for your glory, but I feel like I could give more. There's something that I could really, that I could give myself away and have a greater impact. God really started just at that point to develop an idea for a nonprofit. In the last 4 or so months, this idea for a nonprofit has started to materialize. I've put together a business plan and I'm working on, logistical aspects of it, clerical stuff, putting paperwork together. But during that process, He has brought people to mind to pursue, to be involved, and that is still developing. There's not a lot of detail that I could go into on that, but it's amazing because I have this sense that this is something that He wants to do, and all I have to do is sit back and watch it happen and just receive from Him this gift and receive His talents, these skills, commit to using them for Him, and just watch Him use us in ways that we can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what the next year of my life will hold, and the way that he can use me to impact other people for His name, for His glory. If there was one word to sum up the last year, it would be faith for me. I have had to trust Him for everything. I suspect I will continue for a long time even still, that every day I am literally depending on Him for the food that I eat, the place that I lived. I could talk for hours about the experiences that I've had just in the last year, and they almost equal the experiences I've had in the last 30 years. Just the scope of things that have happened and not happened, money just being handed to me by people who don't know the Lord, but He moved on them to provide for a need that I had. It's just really, really amazing to be so confirmed that you are pursuing a path that He has laid out for you, and that you're in agreement with Him and His will.